Hamid Abdel-Samad is one of the most interesting people I've ever spoken to. Back in 2020, on my old channel, we spoke about the threat of Islamism, how its tendrils creep into society, how they use secularism and democracy in order to get their way in and get their word in, and how they use it to shift and shape society. If you missed this interview, I'm uploading it again so you can see just exactly how we can be aware of Islamism and what we can do to push back. Hamid is a gem of a human being. He's so interesting and he knows his stuff, and how Islamists follow the same playbook that the fascists use. I give you Hamid Abdel-Samad, one of my favorite interviews. If you like this topic, do check out his book as well, Islamic Fascism. Greetings, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another episode of Abdel-Samad, my show. I'm joined by a very special guest today. I'm joined by an ex-Muslim, but not just any ex-Muslim. I'm joined by Hamid Abdel-Samad. Hamid is an ex-Muslim from Egypt, so he's an Egyptian ex-Muslim. He is the author of several books, and he speaks many languages, far more languages than I do. He speaks Arabic, he speaks English, he speaks French, and he speaks German. German is his latest language, I believe, and maybe even some other ones which I'm not aware of. I have a copy of his book, Islamic Fascism. Islamic Fascism has been translated into, I think, 13 different languages. So that is quite an impressive feat to have a book translated so well. I was reading it in the English language, and I have to say it is right on point. It is an amazing book. Loving it. So I'm honored. I'm honored to join Hamid. Hamid is one of those people that you can't really use the typical excuses that you use with ex-Muslims. Excuses of, you don't know the religion, you were never religious. Hamid used to be, or is someone that has memorized the Quran. He's a Hafiz. Hamid is obviously, speaks Arabic. That's his mother tongue. He knows the language. Your father was an Imam. Is that right? Your father was an Imam.
Yes.
Yes, your father was an Imam. So we're talking about someone that's coming from a religious background, right? And so Hamid, how's it going?
I'm fine, great. Thank you for having me on. I was just trying to share the live stream on Facebook, but I don't find it in your page. Can you check?
It's not there? Okay, 1 second. I'll send you the link. It's right here. Hold on. So while we're doing that, I just want to there. Okay, sent it. See if you got it on your Facebook Messenger.
This is the Facebook link, right?
Yeah, I just sent you the link on Facebook Messenger. So this is the first time as well. I'm doing a broadcast on both Facebook and YouTube just to see how that goes. Did you get the link?
Yes. Just let me share it so you can say any.
Yeah.
things.
So I'm going to share an interesting quote from your book.
Yeah.
The Islamic world can be viewed as an onion layered multiple dictatorship. The dictatorship of political dynasties like Mubarak, Gaddafi, Hussein, Ben Ali, and Assad families formed its first layer. The dictatorship of the military, the next. After that, the dictatorship of religion, which determines how children are raised and educated. And finally, the dictatorship of society, which impacts life within families through archaic gender roles. So that's a nice way to put it. It's like an onion with multiple layers. Even if you get rid of one of the layers, you still have a bunch of other layers as well to deal with. Either it's a family, which is why when people leave Islam, you find the problems are not solved because there's so many other things there that are kind of trying to hold them in place, from the society, from the dictatorships, from the archaic gender roles, which are not necessarily always from the religion, but sometimes it's in the culture as well. So Hamid, was that okay? Did you manage to share the link?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, good. So let's start with your background. Like, can you tell me more about yourself and correct any mistakes that I made, basically?
No, ask me questions. Don't tell me to to talk about myself because I'm not good at
Okay,
that. Like, ask me.
tell me about how did you leave Islam? Like, tell me first your background, as in, what's your family like? And then tell
Yeah.
me, how did you end up leaving Islam when you were in a Muslim country, surrounded by Islamic culture? Everything is Islam. What initiated this escape from the dogma?
I think there are certain people who are born skeptics. They are born with a bunch of questions, existential questions. I guess every child is born with these questions, but not every child keeps these questions and is following them and is nourishing them. I think it's very important that we adhere to the questions of our childhood, but not to the answers of our childhood. So I was having a lot of questions in my head since I was a little child about God, like who is he, where is he, why doesn't he show up? That was a very important question for me. And when I grew up, I figured out, or they told me, that he was speaking to a certain guy called Muhammad in the desert in a cave 1400 years ago, and that's how I should know God. So this didn't fit to my concept of justice. I thought if there is a God, he would be he should be communicating with every single human being, with every single being, and not just choosing some people who are special, and then we have to listen or to learn from them, not even directly, but through books and through stories that are told about them. So there was some problem with that. I didn't like it. And then I started to ask questions when I was a young boy, like about hell, like what does that mean? Why is it important for God that I would kneel down? Like, I didn't like this gesture. It didn't fit to my character. That I didn't want to be humiliated in front of anybody. I didn't want to kiss even the hands of my uncles and so on, just like everybody did in the village. So I was a born rebel, and I started. And then my father made the greatest mistake of his life. He was an imam, and he decided to teach me the Quran and to make me the next imam. And
Okay.
so I got the tools. So I got the tools, and then I remember one day, um, maybe I was 11 or 12, and I was reading in the Quran in Surah Al-An'am, the cattle, Surah 6, I think. So I was reading the story of Abraham and his father and his people. The Abraham was upset that he has to inherit the religion of his family, and he was rebelling against that, and he was telling his father, why do you take idols as gods? And he said a very interesting sentence that I kept repeating after that. He was saying to his father, I see you and your people in manifest error.
Dalalul Mubin, right?
إني أراك وقومك في ضلال مبين.
Yeah.
I loved it. And after that, the story goes on, and he started to search for his own God. So he was looking at the stars and saying, like, this star is mine, is my God. And then the star disappeared, and he said, like, no, I don't like those who disappear, so it cannot be God. God doesn't disappear. And then he was saying, this is the moon, this is my God, it's brighter. Then no, the moon also disappeared. And he said, like, and he was watching the sun, and he saw the sun, and then said, that's my God. And like it goes on, and he after that he's using the faculties of his intellect and his senses to find God, and at the end he found his own God. And I was always asking my father about God and searching God and so on. And my father was telling me something once that is very interesting. He said, I cannot decide yet if you are a genius or an idiot. So I was after the morning prayer, I was sitting in front of the house in a terrace, and I was looking to the sunrise, and I was saying, "This is my God. This is bigger." And my father was saying, "What are you doing?" And I told him, "I search God." And then he said, "God is not lost. Yeah, well, why should we search God? God is there."
Yeah.
And I told him, like, what was he lost in the time of Abraham?
Yeah.
And then he said, no, but Abraham found him, and now we are worshiping this God. I told him, Abraham found his own God, but not my God. And Abraham didn't want to inherit the God of his parents. Why should I inherit the God of my parents?
Yeah.
And then he was like saying, who are telling you this bullshit?
Yeah.
And then and he said, I told him, like, Abraham was upset that the stars disappeared and the moon disappeared and the sun disappeared, therefore they are not God. But God is disappearing all the time. Why isn't he showing up?
Yeah.
So that we know that he's God.
Yeah.
And then, like, this was the limit of my father. He stood up and say, if I will hear you saying such story after that, I will break your neck.
Wow.
So
did he mean it?
Yeah, I mean, he said it. I mean,
Okay.
they never mean it. I mean, it's just like a threatening.
Yeah.
And then he left, and I was just saying, whispering to myself, "Inni araka wa qawmaka fi dhalalin mubin." I see you and your people in manifest error.
Yeah.
And then, like, it went on. Like, when you are reading the Quran, and you have some doubts, so one doubt is going to lead you to the next doubt. One question is going to lead you to the next question. And that's one serious problem of our culture. It's not a culture of question and questioning. It's a culture of ready inherited answers. One size fits all. So when you forget for a while that this book is written by God, you will figure out that it's full of contradictions. So I was reading in one surah that the infidels in the day of judgment are going to be blind, deaf, and mute. They won't be allowed to pronounce a word. And in the next verse, you read, and God told them, read your book in the day of judgment. And then they were answering God, oh, please, let us go back so that we can do good. I mean, they're speaking now. They heard him. They could read. They could see it. So this is something which is weird. Like, it's contradictory. And you feel that the book is full of human emotions. People were projecting on God their anger and their wish to revenge and fear and like these are all human characters and are shortcomings that cannot be affiliated to God. So that's how I started to be skeptic about that. But since I didn't have the real tools of critical thinking, this was difficult. So the next step that helped me was that I went to Cairo and studied foreign languages, and I started to read philosophy and so on. I had a short episode of being member of the Muslim Brotherhood because I wanted the revolution. So you want the revolution, and you think the religion of my parents is not the true Islam, but the revolutionary Islam. That's the true Islam. That's a liberating God.
Yeah.
And then you figure out they are just fascists. And then reading philosophy, reading literature, foreign literature, so you start to get the tools of critical thinking and start to avoid that. And then the third phase, and I think that was the time I really left Islam. I became a scholar in Germany, and I was teaching Islamic studies. And I had to make a decision. I was teaching the history of Quran at the university. So I had to make a decision. Am I gonna talk to the people as a Muslim or as a scholar? I'm gonna teach the students what I believe or what I know. So the first serious question was the Quran. In every book in the world has an author from academic point of view, who is the author of the Quran?
Mhm.
If you say it's God, so it's not valid academically. You cannot say God is the author of the Quran. And if you say Muhammad is the author of the Quran, Muslims are going to be upset.
Yeah.
So this was the new question for me. Really, I asked myself, if I never heard from my parents or from anybody that this book is from God, would I just believe it if I found it somewhere and I start reading in it? Would I believe this book is from God? Absolutely not. So it's my emotions, it's my childhood, it's my story with this book that gives it this important. It's the way we sing it. My father was singing the Quran with all his body, not just by not just like by his voice, but you feel like he's singing and he's so happy doing that, and everybody else is and you are a part of this illusion and this ecstasy. So, and then I was studying the roots of Quran, like what are the sources of this book, and then I figured out it's just like every other book in the world. It's a palimpsest. You know what a palimpsest is? It's just like when you write on a piece of leather and then you remove it, and then you write something else and you remove it. So you have the story of culture, the story of religion, starting in old Egypt and Mesopotamia, and this was the Jews who lived in Egypt and later lived in Iraq. We're taking some episodes from the old Egyptian myth and culture and the idea of the one God by Akhenaton and Atom. And then they were taking some stories like Gilgamesh epos from Babylon, and they were like adding up story from here. And the Quran was doing the same thing, was taking something from Jews, from the Christians, from the Gilgamesh epos, from the Alexander Romance, and from some Greek words, some Persian words. So it is a development of religion. So there, just like there is an evolution in nature and evolution in the human brain, there is also evolution in religion. And if we will understand it that way, so it's a human product.
Yeah.
And it doesn't deserve that much holiness and fear and special place, and it doesn't deserve to interfere in our life after 1400 years. And this was the moment I decided to write books like critical of Islam. So this is how I but yet I don't like the word ex-Muslim. I don't like even the word atheist.
Okay.
Why? Because it's a negative identity, and it is still showing that religion is the center of our life.
Yeah.
And it's determining everything. But I'm much more than religion. I consider Islam now just like my childhood.
Yeah.
Yes, it might still be a part of me, but I surpassed it. So I never say I am an ex-child.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So if I would say something about Islam, like I'm post-Muslim, not post-Muslim, and I'm a human being in the first place. There are much more important things for my identity today. I love and am loved. That's for me the most important thing. It's not what I believe, but I know what I know, and what I know is what I feel, what I experience. Love, compassion, humanism. That's the sources of my identity today, and I'm a part of the kingdom of animals. I'm a part of the universe. I am a universe myself, and I'm not that small. So why should I be always orbiting around the religion and defining myself in a positive or a negative way in regard to religion?
That's true. That's true. I feel like I had my own sort of reservations about the term ex-Muslim as well. I think the term was coined by if I remember correctly, Sarah Haider and Muhammad Syed, the founders of Ex-Muslims of North America, and they wanted to use a term that could be used as sort of like an activism, a term that would be it's to show people that we exist and we're in the world, and it's sort of to distinguish between just regular atheists and some
Yeah,
that comes from the Islamic background, right? So I think the term definitely has its place right now, but eventually I'm hoping that there just won't be any need for the term. That people can even call themselves Muslim if they want to, but they're not religious, they don't pray, maybe they don't even believe in Allah,
yeah,
they're agnostic, right? But they're still Muslim. Like my own like my mother and father were kind of like that, right? The sort of like they believe in Allah, but they're kind of skeptical about the details and stuff like that. So
yeah,
I'm hoping that in the future we will just not need to really, we don't have to say I'm atheist or I'm ex-Muslim, but we are just what we are, right? And even
yeah,
if you call yourself Muslim, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily tied to all of the dogma that comes with it. And of course, Muslims don't like that. They want a narrow definition for Islam that's only this specific sect, this specific school of thought, this specific even sometimes aqidah, so Ash'ari or whatever.
yeah.
But we and me as an ex-Muslim, I'm willing to be more generous to the term Muslim and to allow it to encompass a lot more. But of course, it has to mean something. It can't just mean anything. It can't be like someone that worships Jesus is a Muslim. Obviously, not going to that extent.
Yes.
It does have to have some boundaries, but still, I do feel that for now the term it has its purposes.
I know, and I understand that, by the way, and I'm just talking about myself, but I am aware that the term ex-Muslim is political because the term Muslim itself is political,
Yes.
and because being an ex-Muslim is not a matter of course, and people get threatened, people are having hard time, people leave their job, like lose their jobs, lose their families sometimes. Therefore, I understand the political relevance of this term ex-Muslim, and if Muslims are annoyed because of this term, they should make their peace with their own atheists and ex-Muslims. Then the term will lose its political relevance in return.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good point. That's a good point. I don't think that's something they'd be willing to accept, that Islam loses its political, special status. So just to be clear, you are actually an atheist. Like you don't follow any religion at all anymore.
Well, as I said, I don't use these terms because they are negative.
Yes.
I'm a human being. I was there before any religion, so I don't follow any religion.
Okay.
But I don't have an answer if there is God or not. I'm not searching for details. I'm searching about myself. I'm searching inside myself for answers about my life. I am here. I am now, and I don't want to have any kind of being outside. So I'm against the idea of worshiping in the first place. So even there is a God, I'm not going to worship him.
But like, isn't that arrogance? Muslims would say you're being too arrogant. You're not being thankful to Allah who created you.
I didn't ask him to do so. If he exists, have I ever asked? I don't remember. So I have a clear memory. I could memorize the whole Quran. So I don't remember that he ever asked me if I want to come to Earth and lead this kind of life.
Yeah.
I'm thankful to the life I'm having now. I'm thankful to nature that I can feed myself through this nature. So I'm thankful to the things I'm dealing with in my daily life, not an imaginary being that should have created me or gave me all of these blessings. I am aware of the blessings of my life, and I'm very thankful for that. I'm thankful for the sea, for the sun, for everything I see. But I'm not going to be thankful to a secret, hidden being that every culture has depicted him in a different way, and worshiping. Why? Would you expect your father to that you would kneel down 5 times a day to him and wake up 3 o'clock in the morning just to tell him thank you for giving me this opportunity of life.
Yeah.
Like, we don't do that. Like, our mothers, our father, they loved us. That's
Yeah.
it. And we
Yeah.
love them. That's they love us. We love them in return. Why should we worship people because they did something good to us?
And if they imagine that I have kids, and I do have kids, and my kids turn out to be bad. So one of my kids decides that when he grows up, he goes through a phase where he swears at me, he curses me, and let's just say I'm a good father. I never did anything wrong. You know, I did my best to care for them and whatever. And then when he grows up, he decides to be, you know, disobedient, rebellious, angry, for whatever reason. Let's say no fault of my own.
You're not gonna burn him in hell.
Exactly. What am I gonna do to my child? Like, what would you do to your child if he did that?
Yeah, it's exactly this. The like, if you want pray, then you will end up in hell. Like, I was giving this example once. Like, prayers, like when the muazzin in azan, when you hear azan is an invitation. Come to the house of God and pray. Come to the success. So if you invite your friend to come to your house, and you tell him, I will cook a good turkey for you, and I will put it in the oven, and I will bring you a lot of fruits if you will come, and good drinks and so on. And then he would say, no, I'm not coming. Are you gonna take your friend and put him in the oven instead of the turkey? You won't do that. So it's an invitation. Thank you, God. You wanted me to pray. Thank you. No interest. That should be the end of the story. No, he gets angry. That's the narcissism of the founder of the religion. That's not God. He wanted to be followed. He wanted confirmation. He wanted obedience. But God, we assume if there is a God, he must be perfect. He doesn't need that, and he is not reacting to our reactions. Like, if we don't come to pray, then he's angry and he's making the hell hot. That's a very weak God. Has no arguments.
It's very strange that even okay, let's say, for example, this is not for God, but this is for you. The prayer is for your benefit. It's not for Allah's benefit. So if you're not praying 5 times a day, God he cares, but he doesn't lose anything. But you're the one that loses. What do you think about that?
I see masses of people going and praying 5 times a day, and their life is miserable. They are not happy at all. They are not spiritual at all. They are just repeating the rituals. For me, the prayers are my interpretation of the prayers 5 times is like a military parade that Muhammad wanted the believers to show up in front of him 5 times a day, because he wanted to. It was in Medina, and he was not sure who is on his side and who is not. So he wanted to gather them 5 times every day to make sure who is a hypocrite. The hypocrite won't wake up 3 o'clock in the night in winter to show up. And I was asking myself, my father used to wake me up in the morning, like 3 o'clock in winter. So I have to wash myself, and I have to go with him to the prayers. And it was extremely cold. And I was asking myself, why is it good for God or for me to wake up? If I would sleep in my bed and say, thank you, God, for this blessing of sleeping, that might be more effective than waking up and like being sleepy and go, and it's extremely cold. Why is it good for? And like, when you are a young man, you start to have nice dreams in the night, and you wake up in the morning in a very embarrassing situation. My father is waking me up, and I was in the dream with an Egyptian actress. So now I have to. I have to not just like wash my hands and face. I have to make ghusl, janaba. I have to wash all my body. So how can I convince my father I need to take a shower before going with you to that?
my God. That's
mosque. So
amazing.
I have to go with him without even wudu,
Yeah.
without namaz,
Yeah.
and then without wudu. Then that's how religion is starting to teach you how to be hypocrite.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
religion is
yeah, yeah, yeah.
teaching you when you are a teenager, don't touch yourself. Masturbation, you will go to hell. Your hand will get pregnant in the day of judgment because of that. So you get nightmares. So
Oh, yeah.
the religion is making you psychopath and hypocrite at the same time. What is it good for? It's and this is something that made me immune to any ideology or book or preacher who is trying to sell me any kind of a utopia. We are human beings. We are not perfect, and we were never meant to be perfect.
Mm,
And we learn about ourselves through our weaknesses, also
mm,
through our desires, through our lusts. So that's okay. But by honoring our shortcomings, not cursing them. So this religion is cursing our shortcomings and our weaknesses, and is using our weaknesses against us, is using our fear against us, and is trying to sell us the image of a perfect human being, a perfect book, a perfect prophet, a perfect society. There is no such a thing as a perfect book or society or a
mm.
human being. So the moment we accept our weaknesses and we accept our contradictions, we are free. And that's one of the meanest things about Islam, that it gives you the illusion that you can be completely free only if you will
Hmm.
be committed to submission and
Submit. Yeah.
slavery. So that's really mean. That
Yeah.
it's not helping you to be really free, but it's showing you total submission, total slavery is the only way to be free, and therefore it's killing the potential of so many young, brilliant men and women who can lead a happy life, can be very helpful for their societies and their families, but because of this fear of themselves, a
Mm.
religion that teaches you to fear your own body
Yeah.
is taking you a great is taking a great potential from you, and I reclaimed this potential back, and I started to feel how happy a human being can be without any fear, without any bad conscience, or without shame, without so they were growing us up with shame, with fear, with guilt, and these are very destructive tools that create violence later. That's what you sow is or what you plant is that what you are gonna sow later, or
Mhm.
you are
Yeah.
gonna
What you're gonna reap later.
out.
Yeah. What you plant, right?
Yeah.
And this whole thing about shame is a huge part of religious sort of upbringings, where you're taught to to have shame, to have guilt, to feel bad about yourself. I'm a sinful person. I need God's I need God to purify me. I need to constantly seek forgiveness. Muhammad used to do astaghfar, 70 times, seek Allah's forgiveness 70 times a day. Who are you? You think you're such a good person, but if he did 70 times a day, then you need to do even more than that. He used to pray until his feet were cracked. And this is the life is made to worship Allah and to be, we are sinful people. It's just so negative. Like it's all shame, and then any decision that you make in life that you may have to make based on your personal life circumstances, you again you feel shameful. Like, let's say you take a job at a bank, or maybe you didn't even know interest was an issue, and you're not necessarily practicing, or maybe you're practicing but you didn't know about that. And then you have Muslims shaming you, telling you, astaghfirullah, you're working for a bank, all of your money is haram. And I actually told my mom, when I converted from Ismailism, which is very liberal, to Orthodox Sunni Islam, and I became very religious. And I even told my mom, you shouldn't have a mortgage. You need to sell the house or to get a halal mortgage. And she wasn't having any of it. She didn't listen. I'm glad she didn't listen to me. But I told her, like, all of you, and she used to work for a company that was in the finance industry. It wasn't a bank, but it was related to banks and stuff. and I told her, all of your income is haram. And she was like, what is this kid telling me? That, like, what are you talking about? But I feel bad that I was doing the same thing. I was shaming people. I was telling people, like my friends, that, you know, don't work in a bank, and, you know, it's all this negative energy. And, you know, I did it because I thought I'm helping them to avoid Allah's anger. So I thought I was doing a good thing, but you're right. It takes away from a potential, you know?
Yeah, and it is the first door to violence too. People don't understand the correlation between this deep wish to purify yourself completely, to you purify yourself from guilt, from
Mm.
shame, from fear. You start building walls between you and the society you live in. You start to divide the world in believers and infidels, believers that God loves and infidels that God hates. So if you live in Canada, if you know that all the non-Muslims around you are hated by God, how can you cooperate with them? How can you love them? How can you be friends with them? How can you make one society with them? No, you will do your best so that you will Islamize this society, and you will fight these infidels. You do it with thoughts, others are going to do that with weapons. So there is a clear link between this fear and this try to have like this purity, entire purity of thoughts and of actions, and everything should be Islamized. That's fascism, in fact.
Good point. You just reminded me of a personal story. I know of a guy that, and this is actually a common trend with terrorists, that they feel shame about their past life, whether they're involved with prostitutes or alcohol or whatever it is. I mean, and a lot of
And they
times
want
they're
to make
doing,
up. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of times they're involved in like un-Islamic activities, and then they have this sort of conversion event, and they want to make up for all of the evil things they did, and so they want to like, they go extreme.
Yeah.
And this shame, you're right, it's a big psychological component. And as well, you know, can't we say that this whole religious control over sexuality is what motivates many young men to go and fight and die for jihad, basically, right?
Yes. Once you live in a society, especially in the West, where people get paid by governments who are taking tax from selling alcohol and banks and all of haram things. So basically, your salary is haram no matter what you would do. Even you are a teacher, you are
Yeah,
taking it from a government that takes the tax from prostitutes and
yeah.
from alcohol and all of these things. So you live in this society, so you are a sinner just by living there. And then you are not allowed to touch a girl. You are not allowed to be a good friend even with the infidels. Of course, you isolate yourself, so you destroy your chances to have a good job, and to be a good citizen in the society. And you can't have a relationship. You cannot satisfy your natural needs. Just like
Yeah,
you want to eat, you also want to have like relations, and
yeah,
like human touch. That's
yeah,
normal, that's so natural. That's what we have from our animalistic side too, that we
yeah,
need this human touch.
yeah,
But because this is a sin, so you are frustrated economically, you are frustrated politically, you are frustrated ideologically, and you are frustrated sexually. And of course, the last door open for you is to join the jihadists, and then you will have a win-win situation. So if you will like win in the war of in Iraq or in
yeah,
Syria, so then you can take some of the Yazidi girl or the Christian girl as war slaves, and you can sleep with them, and you can
yeah,
be successful in this life. And if you will die, then you go to paradise, and then you will have there also women and Kentucky Fried Chicken and all of these nice things in paradise that you can find in Kmart too. So
yeah.
So that's how, like, you close all the doors for a young man to lead a natural and healthy life, and then you are surprised, why he became a terrorist. And your first answer as a Muslim is, that has nothing to do with Islam. That's the most important. So with what? With what then? It has nothing to do with Islam. So tell me, with what?
Yeah.
Is Bill Gates responsible for that, or Zuckerberg, or
Yeah. And ISIS actually does a good PR campaign. They tried, I mean, I think they've gone down a lot now, but they have this sort of techniques they use to convince young Muslims to come. They have these glossy sort of images they publish on social media. They're smiling with the guns, and they have the Nintendo 64. Sorry, Nintendo 64 is way out of date. PlayStation Pro, 4 Pro, whatever. They make it, they're so strange. It's such a bizarre thing to me to see
yeah,
ISIS posting Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4 and the guns. It's like, how do you connect? Like, you're using kafir, non-Muslim video game technology, and you also, I mean, the guns are probably kafir made too. Non-Muslims are making them, but they don't care. They don't mind.
yeah,
And they have like puppies, and maybe not puppies, kittens, sorry, kittens in the photos. And many young Muslims from the UK, from Turkey, they came and they joined ISIS thinking that this is going to be the next Medina.
yeah. But that's exactly what happens, because they already destroy the world in which those young people are living. So they demontage it. So they demontage.
Demonize it?
So they take the legitimacy of this world away and show it as a materialistic and rotten, and
Yeah.
God is angry with this lifestyle. And they don't have their own lifestyle, which is really existing on earth. Their life is miserable too, but they have to sell this utopia. That's the strategy of every fascistic movement or fascist ideology, that they don't have, they are hanging on an idea from the past that proved its failure many times in history, and the last thing they are dreaming of is that they will repeat the same project with the same steps, and they hope that it will work out that time. So that's the core of fascism. So they cannot tell people, you might come here and the food is not good enough, and you might be arrested by the Turkish military or the American or the Russian military. They cannot say that. So they have to depict a total utopia where there are only heroes going around, and there is only victory, and there is only happiness and acceptance and the brotherhood of man, and all of these ideological fascist motives that we know from Nazi Germany and fascist Italy and so on.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because once people come and they join ISIS or any of these sort of movements, they're really stuck. They're not leaving. They're like,
Yes.
it's gonna be like really, really difficult to leave. I mean, you're basically screwed once you go. And the funny thing is, there was a bunch of people that joined ISIS, and then they regretted it, and now they don't know what to do because they can't go back to the country because they're going to be arrested. They don't like where they're stuck, and then they realize they were stupid and they're fooled into this bad decision, right? I want to move on to, because we actually, before we started this, we discussed that ISIS isn't really the biggest threat. There's actually something else you think is actually more important to talk about. But before we talk about that, just to close off the whole personal story, your journey, what is your situation now? Like, I heard that you need to have police protection, that it's not safe. What happened? Like, how did that start, and what is it? Is the situation still dangerous to this day for you?
Yeah, once it's dangerous, it's always dangerous. It's because the terrorists and the jihadis are everywhere in the world. Everything started, actually, I was invited to deliver a speech in Cairo 2013, like exactly 7 years ago in June. and I was talking like it's a group of secular Muslims who wanted me to talk, and I said, please Google me first because my ideas might be inappropriate for your public or for your salon. And they said, no, we know you, and we know you are brave, and you say everything, and we want you to say everything. And I told them everything, and they said everything. Okay, right. So I'm gonna talk about Islamic fascism. So and I started to talk about the Muslim Brotherhood and the Salafis and the jihadi movements, and the comparison between these movements and the Nazi Germany, Hitler movement, and the fascist Mussolini movement. And until then, everybody, they were intellectuals, students, and so on. They could go with me, and I was giving clear parallels, like those who are adhering to one idea from the past that they want to implement, and once they have the chance to do it, they have to do it with violence because the idea is outdated already. It cannot be really implemented except you do it with violence. And the idea of dividing the world in friend and enemy, that's what fascists do, that's what Islamists do everywhere. And the idea of like having one people, like to put all your hatred, like the Jews, and to believe that with their annihilation, like your nation will rise again and will become great. Like that, what Hitler was saying all the time. First, when we kill the last Jew, then the German nation will rise again. That's the hadith of Muhammad too. Like the day of judgment won't come until the Muslims will fight against the Jew, and the Jews will hide behind the stones and the trees, and the stones and the trees will speak Harry Potter. Yeah. And then they will tell the Muslims, "Oh Muslim, there is a Jew behind me. Come and kill him." And that's the salvation of the Muslim nation when they kill the last Jew. So that's very fascist, in fact, idea. And the idea of jihad and kampf, like the fight, the fascist fight, that the fight, the war is not a political mean or a political way to reach certain means. No, it's just a purpose in itself. It's a mean in itself, like to fight and to die for your fatherland. That's fascist. That's jihad. Yeah. So I was comparing this on many levels, and the militias and the terrorizing their enemies, and like the idea of re-educating the entire society from the scratch. So that's fascist and that's Islamist. So until this, everyone in the room was agreeing. And then I said, but fascism in Islam didn't start with Hassan al-Banna and the Muslim Brotherhood. It started with Muhammad, with Fath Mecca, with the reconquering of Mecca. Because the moment he reconquered Mecca, he established a monoculture. He didn't allow another religion to live in Arabia. He dismissed all the Jews and the Christians from Arabia, and he implanted the seed of intolerance in the heart of Islam. And that part of somebody was making a video of the lecture. So this was published online and it went viral, so that many TV stations were quoting this, and everybody was upset and angry. They tried to reach my father. They wanted him to distance himself as an imam from what I said, and to say that I'm wrong. And my father at least showed character, and he said, if you have a problem with him, answer him. Don't use a father against his son in such a game. Yeah. I want participate in this. If he writes a book, you can also write a book. And then some scholars, like a professor from Al-Azhar University, a very known one, was calling for my death. Like I should be killed. So tomorrow it will be exactly 7 years, like the 7th of June. That's when they did like this. And two others, another the leader of the Jannah Islamiyah, this terrorist group that assassinated President Sadat, he also called for my death. A very famous Salafi, Abu Ishaq al-Huwaini, a very known Salafi in Egypt, was very upset, and he wanted me to be punished. He didn't say kill, but he said I need to be punished, and he was asking Al-Azhar to issue a fatwa and all of these things. And all of a sudden, like, the internet went mad, and they were publishing my picture online and writing my addresses. I used to live in Cairo during that time. And I had to leave the country, and the German ambassador was calling me and was telling me to leave the country immediately because it's getting dangerous.
So he heard about you and he
Yeah.
contacted.
So he heard from the media. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and yeah, then I came back to Germany after long journey, in fact. So I had to leave the country. I cannot say how I left the country because I'm not allowed to say, but I had to leave the country. And 2 years later, I wrote a book about Muhammad. And so I was living under police protection after that. And then 2 years later, I wrote a book about Muhammad. And the German jihadis who are fighting in Syria were writing a message to the jihadis living in Germany, telling them they should kill me because I denounced the Prophet and Islam and so on. So the police was reinforcing the protection, so that now I am having 24/7 police protections, and they fly with me in the airplanes. And when I have a speech, I need to wear a bulletproof vest. And yeah, so it's like you don't have a private life anymore. Your life is really limited. I had to change the place I live many times ever since I came back to Germany. So I had no fixed place anymore, and I can't. But I knew what I was doing. So I cannot just like come now and hit my head against the wall and say, poor me, I'm a victim, and so on. Otherwise, I will repeat the game. No, the most important thing for me was freedom, and I have it. I still have it. I can talk to you now. I can talk in any language and say what I think. I can say it in Egypt. I can say it on the internet. I can say it in Germany. I say it in the United States. And it means I'm free in my soul. I'm much more free than those who are threatening me. Those who are threatening me are caught in the prison of one idea. I own my own ideas. I can get rid of one idea. I used to be a Muslim. I got rid of it. I used to be a fierce critic of Islam. I don't have to be a fierce critic of Islam. I can say my opinion. I can do something else. I write novels. So they are caught in one idea. So they are in the prison, and I am free in my thoughts. So in fact, they think they are imprisoning me by this threat. They are imprisoning themselves and the generations. They're imprisoning their own kids because they are stealing their potential away from them.
Indeed. Wow. I'm sorry to hear wow, what a heavy burden, I mean, to pay for that. But, honestly, the impact that you have had is monumental. I mean, if it's not for people like yourself, I mean, who knows what direction the world is going to go in, right? Like, it's going to, obviously, without keeping these people in check, we have this very unbalanced, religious, like this religion, I should say, that is actually people are willing to die for, and because it promises something more, something otherworldly, something that no one can pay for, it's always the scale is always going to be skewed in favor of the religion. Because if you ask someone that only believes in this life, they're making a rational decision based on their own best interest. Plus, sometimes they're being charitable and they're willing to do something even if they don't gain anything in return. But when you go to the religious side, you're talking to people that they're convinced that there's something else they're going to get. So they're not actually making a sacrifice. I'm not sacrificing anything. I'm just, I gave all my money to them, to this group or the mosque or whatever. But I didn't actually give away anything because I'm going to get back
They're
7 times.
trading. They're trading their life for a better life after death.
Exactly. And so when you have this sort of irrational belief, I mean, martyrdom becomes almost like a good decision. I mean, why not? You'll be better off than you are now, especially if, like you said, if you have all of these check marks, your life is miserable, you're sexually frustrated, your emotion, you don't have a job probably or whatever. You don't connect to the society. There's this us versus them mentality between Muslims and non-Muslims. Of course, not all Muslims interpret, wilaya or being friends as the same way. I know I had a problem when I first converted to Sunni Islam, and I read that ayah in the Quran. In Yusuf Ali's translation, it says, "You will not be friends with disbelievers," and I was like, very confused. Honestly, I was very, very confused. And I asked my mom. I told you my mom is sort of agnostic, right? And she was like confused too. She was like, she didn't understand it. And then I asked some Muslim friends, and the Muslim friend said, no, 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 no. That doesn't mean you can't be friends. It just means you can't take them as your protectors. And I was like, okay, that's different, I guess. And they said, like, for example, what Saudi is doing with America, you're not allowed to do that. But this sort of us versus them mentality, it comes across the most loudly in Salafism, in my opinion. So what's the difference between, like, let's talk about that. Let's go to that topic. What's the difference between Islam and Islamism? Let's start with that.
I'm frequently asked this question. In fact, I get this question frequently, and I don't know why people are so interested in making this distinction between Islam and Islamism. Let's say first, what is Islamism? The problem is the term is new, but the package is very old. The term Islamism is not coming from Muslim tradition or Muslim countries. It's coming from Western Orientalists and political scientists. And they claim that it's a modern phenomena that started as a reaction to colonialism and to modernity. But this is not true. Let's ask, what are the pillars of Islamism, and see if they're new or not. So dividing the world in believers and infidels. Who invented this idea? It's there since Muhammad. So the idea of Sharia, that God is the lawmaker, was it Maududi or Hassan al-Banna or Sayyid Qutb or any scholar, modern Islamic scholar who invented this idea? No, it's in the Quran. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. So the idea of jihad, and with its both sides, jihad al-talab wa jihad al-dafa. So the jihad to defend yourself when you are attacked, but also the jihad to spread Islam and to make war spoils. It's in the Quran. It's in the early phase of Islam. That's what Muhammad practiced. So this is one aspect of Sharia. The idea of dhimmi, like that Jews and Christians are second-class citizens who live under Muslim rules, and they have to pay extra tax to be protected. So who invented that? It's in the Quran. It's in the Islamic practice since day one, or at least since Medina. So what else do you consider to be Islamism, so that you are so keen to distinguish between Islam and Islamism? Islamism is the consequent implementation of the political side of Islam, which has always been there. So why you want to convince me that it's just a reaction to the Western conquest or colonialism or to modernity? So this is like very Orientalistic point of view, that the Muslim societies were like the sleeping princess that was just awakened by the kiss of the Western prince once he landed on the shores of Islamic society. No, No, Islamism is a daily practice since Muhammad, and it's just adapting itself to the new situations. So it appeared again when there was a fight between the rational school of Mu'tazila
Mm-hmm.
and Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the Sunni school of Islam. The Sunni school didn't like that the Mu'tazila was using philosophy to interpret the Quran and like giving so much influence to the intellect and the reason in interpreting the Quran. So therefore, the new wave of Islamism was appearing, and there was a fight, and the Sunni won this fight. And then later, after the Mongols, after the Crusaders came to the Muslim world, there was a new wave of Islamism to fight against them. And then after the Mongols came, the Ibn Taymiyyah was fighting against the Mongols, and he was developing the concept of wala and bara, and like that we should like be distance ourselves from everything which is not Islamic, so that we will win the war against the infidels. And then Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab in Saudi Arabia was reinventing the same concept again. And the Salafis and the jihadis of today are just like recycling the same sick ideology again with the same pillars: jihad, sharia, dhimmitude, and dividing the world in believers and infidels and so on. So what's new? What's new to convince me that there is a distinction between Islam and Islamism? If you want to distinguish,
Mm-hmm.
then you should distinguish between Islam and Muslims.
Mm.
Not every Muslim is a walking Quran. So many Muslims, they don't even know really what is written in the Quran.
Mm.
They are just following a holy construct that they don't know because of their culture. But Islam is allowing is asking every Muslim to pray 5 times a day. How many Muslims are doing that? To pray 5 times a day? Maybe 5% of all Muslims, maximum 10%. So Islam is allowing Muslims to marry 4 wives. Who is doing that today? So many people are not doing that. So they are not doing it because of Islam or despite of Islam.
And I want to, okay, so I have seen a movement that's happening in America and Canada, and not just among individual Muslims, but even like scholars. For example, Abdullah bin Baya, the Sheikh of Hamza Yusuf.
Yeah.
So primarily among the Sufis, where they're trying to, I don't want to say abolish like apostasy laws and stuff like that, but they are making statements like Islam doesn't need Hudood. We don't need to chop off the hands. We don't need to kill the apostates. And what they say is something along the lines of, well, these laws were when the state was connected to the religion, and then there was apostasy was also treason. And then they'll say something to the effect of, we no longer have those conditions, and also the goals of Sharia to preserve life and honor and stuff like that. So based on that, they're like, well, this is actually going to cause more people to leave Islam if we tell them that we're going to kill them, and so we shouldn't do this anymore. So isn't there a distinction among like non-political Muslims? Like there's always been a battle in the university that I went to. I saw a battle between two different groups. There was Hizb ut-Tahrir, the Khalifa guys, the guys that want to reestablish the Islamic State, and they come onto the Islamic lectures and they shout at the speaker, and they're like, you're misguided, and you're telling people to purify themselves and pray 5 times a day when you should be talking about Sharia, and you can't even, without Sharia law, we can't even establish 80% of Islam. And the speaker will shout back at them and say, no, you have it all wrong. First we have to purify ourselves, and then we will worry about the other things later. And they will say, you will never re-establish the Islamic State because all you care about is purifying yourself. So there's a battle between this Islamist group, so like the Muslim Brotherhood, Hizb ut-Tahrir, and the Islamists, and the ones that they don't really care so much about Islamic law, but they want to pray 5 times a day. They want to fast. They want to implement the religion without, they don't really care about the politics, like someone like my mom or whatever. What do you think about that? Is that not a fair distinction between Islamism and Islam?
Yeah, this is still a fair distinction between Muslims and Islam. So if somebody will come today and say we don't need Sharia, we don't need Hudood, is that Islam? Islam is saying clearly تلك حدود الله فلا تقربوها. It's very clear. ومن لم يحكم بما أنزل الله. Yani it's very clear in Islam, if you will not apply Sharia, if you will not apply Hudood, like chopping the hands, and that's what Quran is asking you. God has spoken, and then there are some human beings now who live in the 21st century, and they're embarrassed. They're embarrassed to do what God asked them to do today in the modern world, and therefore they are just projecting their humanity of today on the Prophet and on the Quran, like backward.
Yeah.
So no, the Quran is an archaic book for archaic people, and it is a child of its time. If we will recognize it as such, then we will be free, and the Quran will be free too.
Yeah.
So that's the deal. Like, I don't want to judge the Quran and Muhammad with the criteria of the 21st century, but I don't want them all, Muhammad and the Quran, to judge me and determine my politics and my daily life and my sexual life and my marriage life through the Sharia laws. So there are Muslims today who are much further than their God. That's the sad story.
Yeah.
They're much further than their prophet.
Yeah.
They wouldn't marry a 6 years old girl. They consider it to be bad, and therefore they project it back and say the prophet never did that. Not because he never done it, has never done it, but because they already are linking his image to the idea that he is the recipient of the last message of God. Then he must be perfect. He must be good by nature. So therefore, they were trying to justify why he married 13 women, why he had slaves, why he married a young girl. They are trying to justify. The moment they will just say, like, maybe he is not the prophet of God, and maybe God never spoke, then the whole building will collapse. So they don't want the building to collapse. They want to freeze certain ayah and certain concepts and still keep the holiness of the Quran and the holiness of the Prophet. That's not my approach, but I support every Muslim who want to go this path. That's fine. But then it's not Islam and Islamism. So they are creating a version of Islam that fits to their humanism.
Yeah.
So that has nothing to do really with Islam. It's just they are too coward to leave the whole concept, and they want to recycle some parts of it and freeze some parts of it. That's it. So therefore, it's not a distinction between Islam and Islamism. It's a distinction between a modern Muslim who wants to live in an open society, who wants to be friends with Christians and Jews and atheists, and he wants but still they still want some legitimization from the Islamic texts themselves. So they are half free. They are not really free, but I'm fine with them. I prefer them much more than the sneaky Islamists. Like, I can deal with those Muslims very good, like the Sufis, the Quranists. I'm fine. And I can deal even with ISIS and with the honest Salafists. The dangerous group among Islamists are the groups that the West is thinking that they are the less dangerous groups. So people like the Muslim Brotherhood, who learned the lesson that they actually have allies in the West, like the liberal left, and they don't want to shock them with concepts of Sharia and jihad and hijab. If you don't wear hijab, you will go to hell. So therefore, they started to adapt their discourse. So there is jihad, there is the bigger jihad and the smaller jihad, and the bigger jihad is to study hard and to be committed to your country and to work in the community and all of these things. And hijab, no, if you don't wear hijab, it has nothing to do with hell and paradise. Hijab means empowerment. Hijab actually means feminism. So they are hijacking the liberal concepts, and they are refilling them with the same Islamic things, but with a moderate language. And this brought some concept like you cannot say, you should not say like Muhammad came to أمرت أن أقاتل الناس حتى يشهدوا أن لا إله إلا الله. So, they don't recite these things like quote Muhammad saying, I came to fight with my sword until people would witness that God is the only God, that Muhammad is his prophet. No. They would say Muhammad is the first Democrat. he is the first socialist. He is the one who invented human rights. Muhammad is the first feminist. He was married to 13 women, and he married a 9-year-old girl, and he was having sex slaves that he captured during his war. But he is the first feminist because he said, treat your wife in good manners. So that's the dangerous thing. That a religion that in all its pillars is against modernity, against free human being, would claim that in fact the Declaration of Human Rights of the United Nations was stolen from the Quran. So that's how silly are you? And these are Western-born Muslim intellectuals who are spreading this shit in the media and trying to convince people human rights were invented by Quran and just the West stolen it from Muhammad. Muhammad who chopped hands, who was cutting off the heads of Jews, who was having women, who human rights today means the woman is, and women rights means that a woman can decide with whom to have sex and with whom she can decide what to wear and what not to wear. Is that possible, that a Muslim woman can go and have a boyfriend and come back and say like the human rights were stolen from the Prophet? No. So it's just they are Islamizing everything because they couldn't conquer modernity. They want to Islamize the concepts around modernity. They want to Islamize science. Chemistry, algebra, that's Islamic. Has nothing to do with Islam. It was in Baghdad. And the scholars who developed that, they were called atheists because they didn't like Islam so much. So why you put Islam? And it was not invented in Mecca and Medina. These sciences were not developed in Mecca and Medina, where Islam started. So in Baghdad and in Cordoba, where early cultures were living, and like Persians, Jews, Arabs with Syriacs and like Greek were coming together and debating and reading the texts, the Greek texts, and learning from them. No, Islamized science. This is minority complex. You want young Muslims to love science? Tell them that Muslims invented science. You want young Muslims to love philosophy? Tell them Muslims invented philosophy. You want Muslims to love human rights? Convince them that Muhammad is the inventor of human rights. You want young women to love feminism? Tell them Muhammad is the first feminists. This is label fraud. You are stealing labels which are not yours, and you are suffering from a serious minority complex. And all the values that we are having now in the Declaration of Human has been fought against all the resistance of religions. So don't come and tell me that a shepherd from Arabia invented human rights.
He's do they also say Muhammad was the first astronaut?
They should, in fact. It would be right according to their legend. He was wearing this half donkey, half horse, and flying through the sky.
The thing about hijab is so true. I've noticed that if an ex-Muslim or a non-Muslim says something about hijab, it's taken in a different way than if a Muslim says it. So for example, everyone, I mean, you know, and I know the purpose of hijab is to reduce the attractiveness of a woman. I mean, that is so freaking obvious. That's the whole point of hijab, is when you go out, so men don't see you and they're not attracted to you. I posted this on Twitter and I got such a backlash. People were saying, a lot of Muslim women were saying, no, hijab is not meant for that. Hijab is my right. I get to choose if I wear it and it makes me beautiful, and they're like, it makes me beautiful. And I was like, what are you talking about? Hijab is not meant to increase your beauty, it's meant to reduce your beauty. But it, like you said, it's become part of the culture now. It's become like part of the clothing of Muslims, to the point where if you say something about it, and there was this recent sort of backlash. The Sam Harris, in one of his books, said something to the effect of, hijab or burqa is like putting women in bags or like in tents or something. And there's like a backlash to this. So this happened. One of the atheists that has a YouTube channel quoted this in one of his conversations from a couple of years ago. And this guy Muhammad Hijab made a big deal about it, saying, "Oh, this is so bad what you're saying, putting women in bags." I mean, it's not the nicest way to put it, but I mean that's what you're doing. You're covering them up. They're like mini tents. Some of those burqas are like, you can't even see the eyes or anything. And obviously, like, how is this a good thing? But you're right that it's become now this sort of feminist sort of somehow it's become part of feminism to defend hijab, because Muslim women are oppressed in the West by non-Muslims, even though, and it's like, what about ex-Muslim women? What about women that are Muslim that don't want to wear the hijab, and now you have like hijab day and whatever. How are you,
Yeah,
how are you legitimizing this, like, sort of, misogynistic
misogynistic.
symbol?
Yes,
How is it a good thing?
it has many dimensions. The problem has many dimensions. The first dimension is what I mentioned earlier today, that Islam is perfect in delivering the illusion that you can be only completely free through total submission. So, and many Muslim women, they don't want to admit that they are slaves of this religion and objects of this religion.
Mm.
They don't want to admit that. They want to convince you that they have chosen everything. But to make something free willingly, the concept of freedom has to be open from the beginning. So the idea of hijab means, if you wear hijab, you will go to paradise. If you don't wear hijab, you will end up in hell. If you wear hijab, you will be respected by the Muslim community. If you don't wear hijab, you won't be respected. Tell me, please, sister, where is freedom in that? So the conditions are not free from the beginning.
Yeah.
And you already were introduced to the hijab before you can even think about the hijab. It became a part of your culture, became a part of your emotion life, even by seeing your mother wearing the hijab, even by seeing your family congratulating a cousin of you who wore the hijab, and by seeing others blaming another girl who is refusing to wear the hijab. So you are surrounded of lack of freedom all the time, but you go and make a step forward towards submission, and you want to put some candy on it. Sorry, sister, you can spray perfume on garbage, it remains garbage. But you want to convince yourself it's your own choice. No, this is auto-suggestion. You are sieged by hijab everywhere, and you don't really have the freedom to wear it or not to wear it. It's not like this. And even you do it as a reaction. Oh, the Western society is refusing women with hijab, I'm going to show them. No, you're not free. You are just reacting, sister. You're just reacting. So this is one aspect of it. And then you have the Islamistic aspect of it. The Islamists are having tools that they work with. And the hijab is a very important tool because it shows the visibility of Muslims and of Islamic symbols, and that has its psychological effect on Muslims and also on the society. So we are here. See us and give us rights, and give us privileges, not only rights. So that's important. You know what? Haven't you asked yourself why Muslim imams never try to convince women to pray? but they try to convince them to wear the hijab. It doesn't matter if they pray or not. It doesn't matter if
Why is
they
that?
fast or not. They don't concentrate on that,
Why?
because what they want from women in their Islamistic project is the visibility. They
Mm.
want them to be
Oh.
a part of their psychological warfare. That's what they want. So it's not important if they don't pray. Although praying is a fard, is one of the pillars of Islam, hijab is not. But hijab is a pillar of the political Islam. Therefore, they want women to wear hijab. This is one aspect.
Yeah.
The other aspect, the liberal left and the neo-feminists who are liberal left, not all of them, but many of them, are considering Muslims the new proletaria, like the fighting lower class, because the left there is no really labor class anymore. Like everyone wants to see themselves as a middle class, even the workers today. So the immigrants are the new proletariat that we have to fight for their rights. Like in the past, it was the third world. Like now, no one talks about the third world anymore, right? So it's the proletariat. The new proletariat is the Muslim. So these are the one oppressed by Western capitalism. No one is saying, wait a minute, these are the refugees that are supported by Western capitalism. These are the people who are getting their rights. These are people who are enjoying freedom of faith in these countries that they never enjoyed in their countries. So why don't you see the privileges, all the privileges they have? No. So, and one of the greatest mistakes of the liberal left is that it developed identity politics based on groups, not on individual human beings. So not individuality. They don't care about Muslim individuals. They care about Muslim groups. So they want identity justice. No, you should, if you want justice, then give a Muslim woman who doesn't want to wear the hijab the opportunity. You want the Muslims to practice their religion, fine, I agree with you, but you have to fight for the same right of Abdullah and Hamid to speak against this religion and to criticize this religion. Once you say Fatma and Muhammad can pray, but Abdullah cannot criticize Islam, you are a fascist too. Because it's one package. You cannot have one without the other. You cannot say that when the Imam is cursing the Jews in the mosque that he's practicing his religion, but when Abdullah is criticizing Islam, then he's a bigot and he's a racist. So that's the problem of the left. It's a long story. It's a long story that started, and it has something to do with what's happening in America right now. I know many people don't want to see this link, but for me, it started after the Second World War. There was academic movement, like white academic movement, was feeling guilt towards the Native Americans and also Native Canadians. And they, because of slavery, because of discrimination, racial laws, and all of these things. It started actually from your country in Canada. Charles Taylor was a philosopher who was developing the concept of multiculturalism. So multiculturalism is was looking at people from different backgrounds as groups, not as individuals who have individual human rights, not as groups. So the concept of diversity and the post-colonial studies, all of these things came out of this concept. Like the white man is bad by nature, and everyone who is darker than the white man is good. And this movement was important because there was a lot of racism in the society, and it was needed that you start doing something like this. But with the passage of time, this movement was radicalized and developed this political correctness that you cannot make a joke about any minority. You cannot criticize minorities. You can even you are a part of this minority and you criticize them, you will be considered bigot or Uncle Tom or all of these ugly terms that are emotionally blackmailing you and intellectually blackmailing you. Don't
Yeah.
you do that. You want us to recognize you, come and say Islam is the religion of peace. I
Yeah.
have 1,000 proofs that it's not so,
Yeah.
and the others don't have one single proof
Yeah.
that it is so, but
Yeah.
they are right and you are wrong just because we want it to be that way.
Yeah.
So this political correctness, they were developing a culture of guilt, and you had the civil rights movement in America, which was also needed under, especially in the time of Martin Luther King, and it achieved important things in the equality of blacks and whites and so on. But with the passage of time, the political correctness became radical, and the civil rights movement after the assassination of Martin Luther King became radicalized and developed a very strong victim discourse. So you have guilt discourse facing a victim discourse, and we, the critical independent minds in between, were smashed. In between, no, we had no place between these, because these were the dominant discourses. Guilt, white man has to be guilty and comes like in every opportunity has to excuse himself that he was born white. I'm sorry, I'm born and I'm white and I'm privileged and I am like this. And
Yeah.
it's just like these rituals that you are seeing today, like in the church after George Floyd, a horrible crime. We all condemn that, and there is racism, but this collective guilt and kneeling down and say, I'm sorry for being white and you are great just because you are black. Come on. This is weakness.
Yeah.
This is, you're not helping anybody. If you see someone who is suffering from racism, empower him to use the tools of law and the tools of civil society
Yeah.
to fight against racism, and the society will be on his side.
Yeah.
And the society will help him. Don't build a bubble around blacks and Muslims and Hispanics and just criminalize everybody who is criticizing their behavior, because they are human beings too, and they are also having a lot of shit in their communities. And talking about these things is actually helping them to be a part of the discourse, to be equal. If you insist that they are victims all the time and that they are making no mistakes, we will not move forward. Like, the political correctness will provoke Trump and his
exactly.
people, and that's exactly, Barack Obama couldn't stop racism in his society, but exaggerating the political correctness was creating the Trump fans who now wanted to restore their country back. And actually this was bad for black people, this was bad for Muslims and Hispanics who are living there. So you didn't help people by considering them victims all the time. And that's what they're doing with Islam. They're cutifying everything that has to do with Islam. So Islam is the religion of peace. Really? I didn't know that. Why? Because I want to believe so. Because Linda Sarsour said so.
Oh my God.
Linda Sarsour said so, that must be so. She's against Trump, she must be good. So these links, so now, like, that what happened with the civil rights movement and Nation of Islam, you remember this connection? So now it's coming again, anti-Trump movement, Muslim Brotherhood, they are having a good business together. So that's why hijab is cute, and hijab means empowerment, hijab means freedom, and Islam is freeing human beings, and in fact capitalism is the problem.
This brings up an interesting problem and a challenge basically, which is, if we don't want to be fascists either, we also have to give Muslims the right to wear hijab. Muslim women, if a Muslim woman wants to wear hijab, despite the fact that she was religiously indoctrinated from the age of 7 to be told that you need to wear this makes you special, this covering that you wear on your head, even though nobody else wears it, it's not like natural, it's not organic. Like if you go into Africa, in the tribes of Africa, they don't even cover their chest, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just the way they've evolved the culture to be in connection with nature, and that doesn't cause any issues for them. In our culture, we do cover the chest, men and women usually, but sometimes they don't, like if you go to the beach or something. But a Muslim woman is told that in all cases, even if you're at the beach and it's boiling hot and whatever, you have to wear hijab. But she thinks, and honestly, it is her choice in the sense that based on what she's been taught and the values that she has, and she sees it either as a sacrifice or a compulsion that she needs to do.
Yeah.
But in many cases, let's say, for example, like a convert white woman, for example, like my wife, she was wearing hijab out of her own choice, in the sense that her family didn't force her. I didn't force her, but I insisted on it. I mean, that was sort of the arrangement we had, that you will wear hijab, even though she agreed with it. And she didn't have, but she did it. And it was miserable in many cases. Like, we were going out, we're biking, we're going to the beach. She's wearing this thing, she's sweating, she's hot, it's just awful. But she did it anyways, and that was her choice. So as freedom, people who love freedom, we have to allow that. Now,
Yes.
that's part of it. And now the part I'm worried about is not that. The part I'm worried about is how these people, the Islamists, are using the freedom of speech that we have to come onto university campuses, to come into the West. And I was having an argument with a Hizb ut-Tahrir guy on Facebook, and eventually I told him, why are you here? If you are trying to get rid of the freedoms that we take for granted, that's what you want. You want me dead, basically. Like, he doesn't want me dead, but if you had your way, I would be either in prison or dead. So what are you doing in Canada? Why are you here? And he blocked me at that point. But that's what they do, right? Like, isn't that a problem? Like, they're using our freedom, our liberalism, to take advantage and to spread the toxic ideas that if they took place, they would get rid of the same freedom that they're using to promote these ideas.
Yes. You're absolutely right. Like, I am on the same line. In fact, like, I would never say we should forbid hijab or not allow Muslim women to wear hijab if they want to. But it's a woman should wear that whatever she wants to like, and I have the right also to criticize this concept behind it, and not and not like she's the one who is empowering women and I'm the one who is against women. All of a sudden I am anti-feminist, although I am the original feminist. But because they already hijacked the concept, that now I am the racist and the anti-feminist and the misogynist and everything. The concept of visibility, that making that aware, is dangerous for the society. And when a woman, like in England recently, became a judge, like a Muslim woman who was wearing the hijab, she was appointed judge in the United Kingdom. The Mufti of Egypt, was celebrating that as a victory of Islam. So see how dangerous this is. This woman will be used after that to oppress other women. Why aren't you wearing the hijab? She is a judge and she is wearing the hijab. So you should wear the hijab. So this symbol will be used, this role model, as role model to convince and even oppress other young girls to wear the hijab as a concept.
Would they ever let a woman be a judge in Egypt?
But that's the funny thing. I was about to say that the same Mufti is against a woman to be a Muslim woman to be a judge in Egypt, and they can maybe negotiate about Muslim woman, but Christian woman never. So he's celebrating something that he would never allow minorities in his society and even women in his society. Why? Because it's, for him, it's a victory of Islam. It's not a victory of this particular woman. So the woman is just a tool to conquer one part of the Western society, to put her step there. And once we took a step, we don't take a step back. We need another step forward. Then we want the Sharia law to be implemented in the West. And that's what Western liberals can't understand, that those people, there is no such a thing as Sharia light. Low-fat Sharia. They think there is such a thing. No, there is just Sharia tactic. Like step by step, gradual Islamization, like show presence in courts, in schools, in the media, and make it a matter of course that Islam, and then you can come and say like, we want some Sharia laws to be implemented for our communities. And if you say no by that time, then you are Islamophobic. And that's why also a word like Islamophobia is extremely dangerous, because it never helps Muslims to lead a better life in the West. It helps Islamists to build their infrastructure while everyone is shutting his mouth down, because otherwise you will be called Islamophobic.
Yeah.
If this term is helping Muslim not to suffer from racism and discrimination, I would use it to help them. But I know who is profiting from that, who is promoting that with money from Qatar and Saudi Arabia in Georgetown universities and in Montreal University and other places. They love to talk about Islamophobia because it's a moral judgment. Like, I have a certain idea about Islam, I have arguments. So you don't have arguments to answer what I said today, so just call me Islamophobic. It's a checkmate argument. So I am morally dead. So you don't have to talk to somebody who is morally corrupt. So that's why they love to use words like racist, bigot, Islamophobic, because then they don't have to counter your arguments.
Indeed. That brings up another point about the hijab and what you said. Well, one thing that really bugs me is when these imams will like parade, look, it's the first hijabi that did this, it's the first Muslim man that did. It irritates me so much that you think you're doing a good thing, but what you've done is you still have this us versus them mentality. Like, she's Canadian. She's a Canadian. She's a woman. Why do you have to bring up the fact that she's Muslim or she's hijabi, that she did this?
But the joke is, like you can find a woman who is a Muslim and who became a champion in some sport. And you will figure out that Islam didn't play any role at all by her being a champion in this sport. But when there is a Muslim who was studying the Quran all his life and who is quoting passages from the Quran to justify his terror attacks, then they will have nothing to do with Islam. So, like, being a sprinter has something to do with Islam, but blowing people in the name of Quran has nothing to do with Islam. That's a joke.
That's hilarious. So I think we should wrap this up now. It's been 90 minutes, and if you guys don't know Hamid Abdel-Samad, as I'm interviewing him, he has a channel called Hamid TV on what's the best place to find you? Do you you don't look like you're really active on Twitter, or is it Facebook, or is it
Facebook is more like, I have a Twitter account and I look sometimes to the messages, and but I don't look to the comments and reactions on Twitter. So you can reach me best on Facebook, Hamid Abdel-Samad.
Perfect. And those of you who are new here, please do consider subscribing or joining the channel. You can click join now below, and for as little as $2 a month, you can continue to support me financially, and maybe I can do this one day full time. Now, so we've gone through a lot of things. I've seen a bunch of questions in the chat. We'll just do a couple of them, and then we'll just end off. What I wanted to ask you was about the Middle East, because what I think personally is the battle really needs to be fought in Pakistan, in the Middle East, in Muslim countries, more than in Canada, in the West. And of course, every day I'm hearing from people that are leaving Islam. But the real battle, in my opinion, is in the Middle East. What is the situation in the Middle East, and what do you have to say about that?
At the beginning, I was hoping in Europe and in the West in general, the Muslims there who are enjoying the freedom of speech and thoughts, who are becoming academics, will make an intellectual revolution to reform the thoughts of the people. I don't believe in reform of Islam itself, but I believe in the reform in the state of mind of the people and in the mentality. But this didn't happen. Even Muslim intellectuals in the West, most of them are up to reservation and restoration, not to reformation. So they want to beautify the image of Islam. It's an identity issue. Religion for them is not a topic to discuss, but a topic to defend and to conserve. So I almost gave up that revolution will happen in the West from Muslims and go to the Muslim societies. I still hope that it will be the other way around, although those Muslims in the Arab world and Pakistan and India are having a tough time and they don't have the same privileges, but they are close to the misery. They are much more close to the misery. So fundamentalism is growing, but also millions of young people, men and women, who are very courageous, who are thirsty for knowledge, and who are sick and tired of the same explanations and the same justifications that had nothing to do with Islam and so on. So now, if you will say ISIS had nothing to do with Islam in the West, everyone will agree with you, the Muslim intellectuals. But if you say it in the Arab world, people will laugh at you and they will not consider you to be intellectual. They will think that you're just fooling us, because they know, they live it. Every single day they live that. Women are suffering there. They don't have the luxury to say hijab means empowerment in Pakistan. They have this luxury in Canada and the United States to beautify Islam, and this is coward. This is coward to leave the tyranny of Islam and go to free countries and try to re-establish Sharia and Islam there, and try to beautify the ugly concepts which are protecting Islamism. So this is coward and irresponsible. But I can give you one example. When I write a critical book about Islam in the West, leftist liberals or liberal leftists would call me bigot or racist. When I go to Morocco and make a speech in Morocco, the biggest Moroccan newspaper was writing a figure of enlightenment. See the paradox. And the place where I was speaking was full of women and men and like free and like courageous. And when I speak in the West, the same language, and I'm talking about freedom and enlightenment, Muslim women and men like will point the finger to me, racist, bigot, he is supporting the right wing. No, I'm supporting freedom.
Yeah.
And I'm against everyone who's against this freedom. And why would you escape from the garbage that Islam caused in your society to reestablish it again in the West? This is irresponsible for your kids, for the future of the country.
Yeah.
And don't come and tell me you understand Islam better than me. No, you are just a useful idiot for the Islamists.
Yeah.
They don't care about you as a woman. They care about this piece of hijab on your face, because they can make political gains out of your hijab. So that's what you are worth for them, this piece of hijab. Come, sister, show it in the media, say my hijab means my freedom, and disappear and shut up. That's what they expect you to do. I am interested in you as a human being. I'm interested in your kids. I'm interested in the West as one of the last oases of freedom. Your existence and your insisting on these symbols are suffocating freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Your victim discourse is not good for your child, because you make it easier for Islamists and jihadists to recruit him later, because you feed him with this victim discourse. That then it's so easy. You are paving the road for Islamists to indoctrinate him.
Yeah. So
Indoctrinate him.
Yeah. It's how do I say this? Even as a Muslim, I think many Muslims know this, like instinctually, that they know that the West is better for the freedoms, even for their own religious beliefs and practicing. They know that in their own countries, many of them are oppressed, even when they're following Islam in some cases. And they know when they come here, they'll be treated better. They won't be discriminated against. They know that we have morally superior values. And if they go, and that's why they don't want to live in, for example, Egypt. They want to live in Canada. Like, I know people that went to Egypt and Muslims, and they were telling me that when they came back, that honestly, like, there's so many things I missed in Canada that we just take for granted here. And so I think deep down, some of them realize that, but they don't realize how they're being used and how this game is. They have this sort of tunnel vision, this sort of utopian idea in their mind, the longing for this Islamic. They're probably thinking the Islamic utopia is going to be like Canada plus or something like that, even though it's probably going to be more like ISIS, right?
That's the sad thing, because they never learned from history that this idea has failed so many times and caused a lot of blood and a lot of suffering, especially for women. That's why I am sad for women who try to promote Islam as a feminist religion. This is so stupid. This is so stupid. It's just because they left their country, and they never, like, if you start critical thinking, you have to go on. You cannot start critical thinking and say, oh, maybe just like the hadith is a problem. Maybe just the tafsir is the problem. Maybe just it's a misunderstanding of the verse of the Quran. No, critical thinking means you apply it to everything. And the first thing to apply is, why should God choose someone in the desert and talk to him about so many things that we don't need at all today? And he's insulting Abu Lahab, and he's insulting another guy and saying he's coming from illegal marriage, and then talking about a lot about battles and chopping heads and chopping fingers, and talking about Muhammad marrying his
adopted
daughter-in-law, and all of and threatening the wives of Muhammad if they will not be kind to him, that he will change them with other wives. Why is it like this? If we agree that God speaks and he already created a channel of communication with one human being, then he can do that with each one of us, that we don't need someone first to come and tell us God said that via Jibril, then via Muhammad, then via the one who interpreted the Quran, and via the one who transferred the Quran to me. Is it not possible that God will speak to me directly and inspire me directly? Why do I need to go, no, I misunderstand this sentence, and I killed so many people because I misunderstood this sentence. I took women as slaves because I misunderstood this Quran. So they don't post the most important question, not maybe it is a wrong interpretation, maybe it's not from God at all, and you just emotionally bound to it and you cannot free yourself from it, and you read it with confirmation bias. The worst enemy of knowledge is confirmation bias. The worst enemy of knowledge is the emotional attachment to the object of your study. So you're studying Islam and you're emotionally attached to it. And maybe this is also my message to those who left Islam. We should not play the game. We should not play the game the other way around. That you should also not be hating Islam while studying it. Otherwise, your confirmation bias will make you not productive. Freedom doesn't mean just leaving religion. Freedom is a broader concept. Like many people left Islam, but Islam never left them. So they're still having the same concept, the same way, and they want to dedicate all their life just to talk about Islam, just to attack it, to criticize it. No, show through your daily life that freedom is more attractive. Show that you are free from Islam and you are free from hating Islam too. Yes, be an activist, help those who don't have voice in Pakistan and elsewhere, but don't build a negative identity around Islam again. Free yourself from both identity of a Muslim or of an ex-Muslim. Just be a human being and show Muslims that it is possible to be free from both. from loving Islam or from hating Islam, from praising Islam or from criticizing Islam. That's much more worse. Life has endless potentials, and we as human beings have endless potentials, and we should not be living in a small cave. Like the Islam was born in a cave. We should not be living in the same cave in the 21st century. We have many windows to the world. We can leave the cave and we can live our lives.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful way to end it. I want to say thank you for your time and for coming and discussing on the channel. Those of you, again, who haven't seen Hamid Abdel-Samad, I think this was an amazing conversation, and the conversation just flowed. I mean, I think we could have gone on for another 2 hours easily. So we should definitely do this again at another time. Thank you so much, Hamid. And is anything else you want to add before we close off?
I will just continue the same thought, like everything which is born from fear is gonna end up collapsing, no matter if it's a religion or criticizing the religion. Everything which is coming from love and building over love will always continuing, and it doesn't need a holy legitimization. The love in itself is the holy message that we can have in this life. I hope I didn't hurt the feelings of Muslims who are listening. I think I respect you, therefore I'm honest with you. I hope that I didn't increase the anger of ex-Muslims or atheists towards Islam, because anger cannot be the solution. Understanding. I love a sentence said by Søren Kierkegaard. We can understand life by looking back to the past, but we can live life only by looking forward. That's what I want to end with.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much. And one more last appeal. If you're new to the channel, please do subscribe, and also consider joining it. As I mentioned below, the financial support does help me, and it does help me to make this one day something I can do maybe full-time. I don't know if it'll ever happen or not, but please do consider joining the channel. Thank you so much, Hamid. And